Videos like these are made possible by viewers like you, who support the channel through Patreon, channel memberships, and stream donations. And don't forget to check out the Bad Weapon Rehabilitation servers at www.badweaponrehab.tf. Check the links in the description for more information, and let's get into the video. Medic is the class that everyone wants on the team, but no one wants to play. And even when they do get a medic on the team, that medic never wants to change 2/3 of his loadout, probably contributing to why no one ever wants to play medic in the first place. The primary and melee slots for medic are basically decided for you as long as you have them unlocked. The crossbow and the Ubersaw. And if you ever move away from this rigid meta, it's probably because you've just genuinely forgotten what the other options are even like, and you've got to do something to spice up medic's gameplay. And of all these options, I think the most forgotten might just be the Vita-Saw. A weapon I've heard being described as worse than the stock Bonesaw. But just how true is that claim? Well, I'm no medic expert, but I've decided to hang up my Ubersaw for a moment and take a look at the Vita-Saw to see just how bad it really is, and if it really holds the distinguished honor of being medic's worst melee weapon in the game. How the Vita-Saw works is that every time you hit an enemy with it, you'll deal normal Bonesaw damage while also gaining an organ. Each organ allows you to retain 15% of your Uber charge upon death, up to a total of 60% with 4 organs when it caps out. In exchange for this, you have -10 max health at all times. Basically, it's a not so subtle reference to Bioshock's Vita Chambers, with the design of the weapon being almost straight up plagiarized from the game's atom harvesting tools as well. And that's why you can't have a strange one, because the creator who made this thing didn't get permission from 2K Games. And that's just another reason why no one uses this thing. Anyway, neither of the weapon's 2 stats get away without any scrutiny. The downside is very obvious. Having a passive decrease in health isn't great, and the general consensus that I've seen in regards to the upside is that it only exists to reward you for dying. This is especially bad when the design of the weapon encourages you to go in for swings to get that Uber charge back to begin with, meaning you'll suicidally charge in, get 1 or 2 swings off, and then die. Potentially even dying because you had that 10 less health in the first place. But hey, that's like 30% Uber you got back when you were at 95. So let's discuss these stats for a second, starting with the downside. Now I'm gonna be honest, I don't see this as all that big of a downside. One of the main reasons for that is that a lot of the things that kill you as a medic tend to kill you quickly and unexpectedly. Headshots, backstabs, demo night charges, soldier bombs, random crits, random crits, random crits, a lot of random crits. Killing a medic quickly with a high burst of damage is incredibly important, because if you take your time whittling him down, then oops, now you have an Ubered power class in your face after you just wasted all of your ammo. Even if you don't see that he has full charge, unless it's competitive and you're counting Ubers, or maybe a Spy or Solemn Vow medic, you're not going to know if he's a fraction of a second away from getting that charge to full until it's too late. And in all of these situations, the health threshold really just doesn't matter. And even in situations where it does matter, the design of the game is such that a lot of your teammates are going to have your back. Take one of the biggest examples of the Vita-Saw's downside coming into effect, Afterburn. That'll kill you quite a bit faster than if you were using any other melee weapon. That's a difference of maybe 3 or 4 ticks of Afterburn, depending on your health regen. But it's in the best interest of your team to keep you from burning to death anyway. Your health doesn't even have to be all that low while you're on fire for your heavy to throw his lunchbox item at you, and that's on top of things like dispensers, Girardi, Mad Milk, and even the Crits Creek's taunt if you're that paranoid about Afterburn yourself. It's a very similar situation to the downside of the Pain Train in my opinion, which is to say, it's really not that bad. There's 2 ways to determine how much this downside matters. Using the Vita-Saw and dying against an explosive while getting a funny ragdoll, meaning it killed you within a factor of 10 health, so the downside almost certainly mattered, and playing medic without the Vita-Saw and seeing how often you go to 10 health or under. Both of these happen to me very infrequently, like I could count how many times it happened on one hand, and I was playing decently risky for a lot of my gameplay since, you know, I had to get some saws in to show off how the thing even worked to begin with. So yeah, the downside exists and did get me killed a few times, but not nearly enough to the point where I seriously regretted using the thing. Okay, at least compared to the Bonesaw. Obviously, I'm not going to go and make the outlandish claim that the Vita-Saw is anywhere near the level of the Ubersaw. It's not. Nothing is. The Ubersaw is so oppressively meta-defining that there's no reason not to use it. And all discussion around other medic melee weapons kind of has to pretend it doesn't exist in order to have any kind of non-circular argumentation of why wouldn't you just use the Uber-Saw. I just went over how the Vita-Saw's downsides don't matter all that much. That ain't shit compared to not mattering at all. Oh man, a slower swing speed. I sure wish there was a way around that. I'm making the much more generous comparison to the stock Bonesaw, since that's the weapon I hear that the Vita-Saw is even worse than. Which may not be as outlandish a claim as you think, since I don't believe the Bonesaw is a bad weapon. Now, is the Bonesaw a bad weapon compared to the Uber-Saw? Oh, fuck yeah it is. It may as well not even goddamn exist. But again, we have to look at this from a standpoint where the Uber-Saw doesn't exist. In that aspect, the Bonesaw is still outclassed by the Solemn Vow, which has the same downside as the Uber-Saw, just even more pathetically irrelevant. But it holds its own against the Amputator by being better at last resort self-defense. In a world without unlocks, which, hey, we got to see quite a bit of when the item servers were down for 3 days straight, the Bonesaw sits comfortably alongside the likes of Sniper's Kukri and Demoman's Bottle as a perfectly usable stock melee weapon, because all 3 of these classes struggle in the department of close-range self-defense. Sniper needs to hit an all-or-nothing close-range quickscope, Demoman can't defend himself at close range without damaging himself otherwise, and Medic's only other means of self-defense is the syringe gun, which is inconsistent to say the least. Compare this to classes like Pyro or Heavy, where the only reason you'd pull out your stock melee weapon, even without unlocks, is because you just straight up ran out of ammo on all of your other weapons. The Bonesaw isn't bad, it's just that it's outclassed by its unlocks. Except maybe the Vita-Saw. Because the Vita-Saw's upside only comes into effect when you die, meaning until that happens, you're just a medic with a lower health pool, right? Well, I feel like this only really applies if you're going out of your way to try and farm the fuck out of organs, because then you're obviously putting yourself in the line of fire and then dying afterwards because you're trying to get use out of the weapon. If the only way you can do that is by dying, then that must mean you want to die, right? I can see where this thought process is coming from. But I see the Vita-Saw as less of a reward for dying and more like life insurance. Because here's the thing, no matter what happens, you're going to die as a medic because your role is so important that if the other team wants to make any progress, you're almost certainly going to have to die for that, and they'll commit to that. People absolutely value your death more than their own lives. So instead of going out of your way to try and farm organs, just use the Vita-Saw as you would the Bonesaw, as a last resort self-defense measure for when you're caught out by a flanker or see a spy or whatever. Spies especially are very useful because you'll gain organs from hitting them even if they're disguised or invisible, something even the Uber-Saw doesn't grant, and something that makes this an exceptional spy checking weapon, as long as you don't get face stabbed. In the best case scenario, you'll win the fight and have a couple of organs handy for the next attempt on your life, and in the worst case scenario, you at least got a swing or 2 in on the guy that killed you and have more Uber than you would have had otherwise once you respawn, saving yourself time and maybe even having Uber ready just in time to save a life or secure a push in the next life. The thing with the Vita-Saw is that it's a weapon that works best in hindsight, because there's going to be plenty of situations where if you're using another melee, you might have a decent amount of Uber and get a couple of swings in on the guy trying to kill you, but you die anyway. This even happens with the Uber-Saw, or even if you do manage to get an Uber off, you'll have just enough time to save yourself, and then you'll just die immediately afterwards, ultimately accomplishing nothing. That's when you wish you were using the Vita-Saw. And honestly, it's a scenario I found myself in as medic quite frequently. However, there are still plenty of issues with this execution. One of the biggest ones for me is that most of the time when I die as a medic, it's because I just used my Uber. That's when I'm furthest into enemy lines and at my most vulnerable, so unless my pocket is seriously protecting me, or I just run away preemptively while I still have some Uber left, leaving him to die, I'm not going to have any Uber saved up for the next life, even if I manage to farm a bunch of organs. At that point, I'd rather die in the middle of my Uber, because the Vita-Saw will save your remaining Uber charge if you die in the middle of it, which is especially useful for mediguns like the Crits Creek and Quick Fix, and in situations where you get blasted into a death zone. The other problem isn't really a problem when compared to the stock Bonesaw, but in situations where you don't die, then the Vita-Saw doesn't really have an upside at all. I mean, you're not dying, so the downside doesn't matter either, but you're not getting anything out of it either except peace of mind for if you do drop it instead of popping it. How valuable that is really down to individual preference, I think, but in my experience, I would rather be using the Vita-Saw than the Bonesaw. And if the Bonesaw isn't a bad weapon, then I would say neither is the Vita-Saw. Yeah, I'm keeping those balls of yours nice and blue for the next TF2 Bad Weapon Academy, especially because the next episode of that series is going to be on a new Vegas weapon instead. So there you have it. I don't think the Vita-Saw is bad. But does that mean it's a weapon that I like the design of or enjoy using? No! I would so much rather the Vita-Saw give you something to do with those organs while you're alive, instead of just sitting there hoping that someone kills you while you have a decent percent in order to justify using it. Again, it's not like this effect is useless. In fact, it's proven to be quite useful on multiple occasions for me. But it doesn't give me the peace of mind like life insurance is supposed to. It stresses me the fuck out. I'm just sitting there like, come on, come on, come on. Whew. 30% with 2 organs. I'm good now. Wait, it's still going and I don't have enough organs to get it all back if I die now. I'm in too deep now. Fuck, fuck, fuck. And don't even get me started on when you harvest too many organs. Like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? It caps out at 4 organs anyway. I can't do anything with these even if I die at 100%. If organs were some kind of consumable that gave you a benefit you could use as soon as you had it, that would make for a way more engaging design and remove a lot of the problems that plague the weapon across the board. Now, am I suggesting that the medic should eat the hearts of his enemies in order to gain the powers they had in life, like General Butt Naked? Yes. Or you can do what we did on our rebalance server, keeping the uber retaining abilities of the Vita-Saw, while also allowing medic to gain organs more frequently by healing enough damage on teammates on top of attacking enemies, while also making them far more disposable. You can use an organ to fully heal a teammate all the way to max overheal with a swing from the Vita-Saw, or consume 3 organs in order to gain a life-saving critical hit from the weapon, with the added downsides of a slower overall healing rate and less damage per swing. This version is frankly just way more fun to use than the vanilla Vita-Saw, which, while I still don't think it's a bad weapon, currently sits in this sort of uncanny valley between the Bonesaw and the Ubersaw. So yeah, I'm willing to call the Vita-Saw Medic's worst melee. Unlock. Maybe the Amputator gives us some competition there, but I'll have to see how I feel about that one once I start using it more. For now though, I think in those seldom times I play Medic, I'll be sticking to my Ubersaw. And in those instances where someone kills me right after I get a fat random crit on someone, I'll think to myself, man, if only I were using the Vita-Saw in that specific situation, and then never think about it again. Oh jeez, he's freaking dead. Oh jeez, they're freaking dead. No! No, they're all dying. Stop this. Please. No. They're just little boys. They're little babies.